Hello and welcome to the SAAS podcast. My name is Mike Nicholson from SAAS. Today I am speaking to Steve Filler from ShowHeroes. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Pleasure. I haven't seen you for a little while, so keeping well?
I'm keeping well. It's been a long time actually since...
Keeping out of trouble?
Keeping as much out of trouble as possible. Definitely, feeling the Q4 vibes now. It's busy, but good.
Full steam ahead, top gear. So ShowHeroes, for those that don't know, maybe give us a little bit of a feeling of who you are, what you do it with, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I run the UK business for ShowHeroes. We're in 20 markets now across Europe and LATAM. So we're, I guess, CTV first multi-screen video business. So our roots were in online video, where we make editorial content, video editorial for publishers, publish it in our player on their pages and monetize it for them. So trying to help publishers generate more revenue from the growth of video. And in the CTV space, we're working with like 120 plus fast channels, manufacturers, content providers across, as I said, 20 plus markets where we have feet on the ground, but a wider kind of capability in terms of targeting.
And that's creating content as well for the
It's not creating content. It's not creating content in the CTV space, because a lot of our content is short form video. It made for mobile because that's where most of the online publishers' audience is. In the CTV space, a lot of our innovation has been around creative formats, innovation. We do use our content as well to sort of stitch together with ads to put a little bit of content before an ad to get the user in the right mindset to receive the advertising. But it's been a lot around, I suppose, creative and content innovation. And the link between the online video and CTV space has definitely been the contextual targeting piece, which is becoming kind of more enhanced every day.
Yeah. So when I was at Opera, it was the very, very early days of CTV. It was a long time ago, as the grey hairs will have. I wasn't really working on it very closely, but we kind of got a little bit involved because I was running the SSPs, but there wasn't a lot of inventory, if we're going to be honest. And it's obviously moved on a massive amount. And I think it's an area that I don't know too much about from a professional point of view. I have my views as a consumer, which we'll dig into later. But so where is the CTV market at the moment? Is it got to the point where there's more inventory than could ever be needed? I wouldn't say, it's hard to say more inventory than is ever needed, because as you know, in a programmatic kind of ecosystem, people are then also trying to find the right audiences on that content. So you still need a lot of scale. But you can get every campaign away. In the early days, it was like there's not enough inventory. There's like 200 impressions or something. For us now, it's a really significant be a part of our revenue. I think kind of maybe a couple of years ago, it was still kind of very much in growth phase, but it's now, really established. I think all of the advertisers that we work with are activating across online video and CTV. They see the value of CTV in terms of the scale, the breadth, and also I think the just the opportunity to do more interesting creative work than maybe you could in sort of traditional TV space. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities to personalize, to enhance, to deliver kind of interesting outcomes. So we've seen real significant uptake in interest over the last couple of years, and that's only going to continue from what we can see. Okay. And who, in terms of like job title or department, who's buying CTV advertising at the moment? Is it coming out of TV? Is it digital, VOD teams, all of the above?
It is all of the above. So I think definitely different agencies have different approaches, and I think even within some agencies, different teams are buying it. So in most cases, you'd say kind of AV teams are also looking after CTV, but in some cases it's sitting with digital teams still for sure. I would say, yes, of course, there is some migration of revenue from TV into CTV. But I think there's also a shift just generally from digital advertising into CTV, from hopefully we see more from social platforms into CTV. So I think we're seeing it coming from a lot of different directions. And then you've got, I suppose, recently then the growth of retail media, and CTV can play a really big role in that. So there's definitely no sort of one size fits all. We talk to a really broad range of people within the agencies to understand I guess what they want to get out of CTV, because depending on where that comes from, often the agency has a slightly different view of the role of CTV or how they might want to utilize that opportunity.
So I suppose if it's VOD teams buying it, then that's quite good for a business like yours, right? Because if they can buy CTV and online video, then you can kind of sell two things at once, right? But in the early days of VOD, there seemed to be, I don't know if it's a bun fight is the right word, but sort of different departments within an agency go, well, that should be ours because it's digital. And then TV departments go, well, that should be ours because it's video. Like, you know, is CTV going through a similar growing pain, would you say? Or
I think it's probably gone. I wouldn't say the battle's over, but I think most agencies, it's established now where it sits, and I think the lines are kind of are drawn
now, and agreed. Everyone's happy.
It's always, I think, evolving, but I think I think with most agencies it's pretty established, and I don't think there's there's too much of a fight. I think there's other battles to be had in that space.
Okay. And how do brands typically, how do you see, I mean, I guess it's a mix, but how do brands typically work with you? Will they come to you with a video brief, which could be CTV, online video, mobile, et cetera, and then you kind of put it together across all of those platforms? Or do they tend to be, this is a CTV brief, this is an online video brief?
Again, a real mix. We have, obviously, we love a brief that's kind of full multi-screen, and then we can sort of use the right screen in the right way to achieve the objectives. But I would say probably 50% of the time the objective is want to deliver video across online video and CTV. But then we do get still a lot of briefs that we specifically want CTV or online video in these markets, and these are the objectives. So again, I think it varies significantly based on the brand, the market, and the objective. Like, what's the role of video for the campaign?
How does the targeting work? I'm just thinking back again to early days of CTV. It was pretty basic, but I imagine it's grown and got more sophisticated over time. So how do you target the right ad to the right person?
Yep. This has been, I would say, it's been a really challenging area over the last couple of years. So for us, we've come as a video business from the online video space where I wouldn't say it's easy, but to be able to contextually target online video, you can read all of the words and information on the page and understand the context of the page relatively easy, as long as you've got some half decent technology. So that we've been doing that for the last sort of 4 years. And then we've been trying to apply that as much as possible in CTV. In the early days, we're working with 120 plus channels, manufacturers, content providers. A lot of them were sending information in a slightly different format. So they wouldn't even like sport might be sport for one, and it might be special events for another. So I think the consistency in terms of how information was being passed, the amount of information being passed, the EPG guides being fully up to date, like that's moved on a lot, thankfully, and we're now capturing more consistent data from those channels and partners. But also this is where AI helps significantly, because we can ingest a lot of data in even if it comes in slightly different formats, use AI to normalize that, make that consistent. So we now have a unified platform that enables us to understand the client's audience, interrogate that audience in terms of like, how do we, what is it specific, what specific nuances of that audience is you looking to reach, and then it builds out like, okay, here are the kind of keywords and entities that are relevant to that audience in the mindset you want that audience to be, and then here's the semantic, or here's the contextual segments that are relevant for this campaign across online video and CTV. So unified taxonomy and targeting across online video and CTV feels like it's sort of finally genuinely possible now. So we've been taking that kind of new proposition to advertisers for the last, it's really kind of like 4 to 6 weeks. So it's kind of sort of fresh off the press, there's still obviously a lot of education process in that process, because you have to understand that in the world of CTV, most of the content that is available is entertainment. So there are certain contexts that are harder to reach in CTV than in online video.
But do you break entertainment down into like cooking, gardening, that?
Of course. It can go a lot more granular. But if someone wants to, let's say target, like people looking at specific financial content, clearly there's a lot more scale on that content in online video than there is in CTV. There's not that many channels. There are finance channels, but there's not that much scale. So it's then a case of trying to find out a little bit more about the audience and use a lot of the intelligence that we've generated in years of running contextual in online video to understand the connection between different contexts and apply that into the CTV space to kind of help with scale. But
is that how online video is being bought predominantly these days via context?
Yeah. I would say 90% of the online video campaigns that we run are using context to reach an audience in the right moment. Occasionally then there's kind of more of a sort of an audience layer as well, where it's a specific campaign that might want to reach a really kind of, let's say, high-end audience, or equally a kind of, let's say, kind of more a lower demographic audience, but with a really kind of sort of specific campaign. But most of that is still kind of with a contextual lens.
Okay. You're not allowed to do a podcast these days without talking about AI. It's not allowed. They don't let you do it. Yeah. So we should do that. You mentioned how AI is helping you in terms of taking a huge amount of data and normalizing it. And so that's a very positive AI angle, if you like. Have you seen any other positive angles on how AI has been helping ShowHeroes?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're developing new formats all the time. We've gone through a series of sort of internal training and development, and we ran some internal competitions to get people to think of new ways to apply AI in a way that will help our clients practically. And so there's a few formats that we've started to launch off the back of that. So things like, you've seen sort of traditional sort of chatbot type mechanics in ads. So as that migrates into the world of AI, it's really interesting how the conversation becomes a little bit more human, because the traditional chatbot is very decision tree. You got these three options, and then there's another and you're just taken down a path. Whereas I think the formats that we're developing now in that space using AI, you can feed it with so much information that it's like a sales assistant, but when I've used it, it felt like a human interaction. You ask a question that's really custom to you, and you get an output that is tailored to you. So I think that will be really useful. That works across online video and CTV. And there's if we now assume that 60% of the population are going to use AI to research, especially bigger ticket items. There's a good opportunity for brands to sort of control that experience.
I would say, just sample size of one, I would say 95% of my search now is via ChatGPT, because it just gives a better answer more quickly, and I can just ramble into it as a voice note. What I'm looking for is like kind of this sort of thing, but not that, and then this thing, and it just sort all of that mess out and go, I think this is what you're looking for, right? Yeah,
but I think it's also like being able to train the model to, I mean, let's take, for example, if you're a car manufacturer and someone asks the question is, could I fit 3 car seats in the back of this car? Rather than a really mechanical response, is being able to sort of say, well, you know what, actually, probably not. But if you wanted to and you needed to, you'd want to think about these models. But if you wanted to bring your car seats into a local showroom, we can try that for you. And it becomes, as I said, it feels like a more, even though it's clearly not, it feels like a more human interaction. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. I think it's easy for us to kind of assume that everyone is using AI with let's face it, there's still kind of a big cross-section of the population who it's still new to, but there's no doubt.
Do you know what though? I work on a Tuesday. The team get together at David Lloyd, and we work there. We get a big table, have lunch there and stuff. It's nice.
Very nice.
And I got there early one day, and there was 2 old fellas, probably in their 70s, maybe even older than that, talking about ChatGPT. And I thought, wow, it's hit mainstream when you've got the older generation like that talking about it so knowledgeably. There's a bit like TikTok, right? When it first came out, only the young kids knew about it, and now it's got to the point where everyone's on it.
Yeah, I guess now even just in your web search, it's the first thing that's pushed to you as AI results. So every consumer is going to be using it in some way, whether they make the choice to go down that path or they're just guided down that path. It's becoming the norm for sure. So lots of there's definitely lots of positives.
Cool. The chatbot thing's really interesting. We're actually just about to launch at SigSales that as a service. We because you're exactly right, the decision tree model's gone altogether now, and so we built a chatbot for the SigSales website, and rather than it being quite mechanical and just going off to the internet to answer questions, we train it on me, basically. So I spend hours creating content in my voice, answering questions in my voice, the way I would answer them based on my experience and everything. And then you just say, right, just use that. So then when somebody asks a question, they basically can go and find what I said about that and come back and answer it. And it makes web search so much easier. Sometimes you go to a website and you're looking around and you think, what do I want? And can't find what you want. You just, this is what I want, find that, go find it and come back. It's
absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah, and if we can incorporate that into advertising, and then essentially means that then any of those the users that we do then send through to the client's website, it should be way more informed. They're going to have at least kind of got through a few stages of their interrogation of the brand and the product. So, rather than just random clicks because it looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So there's some positive AI stories there. I know before we came on air, we were talking about some of the maybe not so positive applications, and that's the rise of AI video content that's flooding social feeds. What's your view on that?
It's really interesting, and I would say as a consumer, it feels that even over the last couple of months, it's the acceleration of the sheer volume and sort of density of AI generated content on social platforms has just gone crazy. It's also interesting that when you see that content, I think in the early days it was sort of quite fun entertainment content, and it was kind of, that's great. AI can do some interesting things. I think now from looking down, you scroll through comments on the content that you've realized is AI, and everyone just seems to now be then really negative about that content and its kind of impact. And there's a lot of we've had enough of this. And then I think but that's just the sort of harmless entertainment content. I think then you kind of have got into the world where then it's more delivering, let's say, key information, news, and supposed facts to the audience. I think then that's kind of really dangerous. So I think it feels like in the social space, it's going to make brand safety and brand suitability even harder to control. I'm hoping also that that's another opportunity for the publisher community to thrive again, because actually if you're an advertiser and you want to advertise in video, if you can't be sure that the content you're going to advertise in is quality generated, whether AI or human generated, it's just about what's the quality of the input, what's the purpose, and therefore what's the output. Whereas if you're advertising on a publisher website, even if they're using AI to produce content, it's still informed and it's accurate and it's from a brand that you trust and can rely on. So I think I know that a lot of the social platforms are looking at new ways to label that content. I've certainly not seen any of it labeled so far. So it'll be, I don't know where that project is
like
at.
A little product placement that we have on TV, like you're thinking like a little AI. In fact, if I did see something, where did I see? I think it was on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I think I shared something on LinkedIn. I created a picture for a post using ChatGPT, and I think it automatically said, just to let you know, this was made by AI. I think.
Interesting.
I did see it once.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting area for brands to get to grips with, because if the user reaction to that content on those platforms is super negative, clearly that doesn't feel like a great place to be advertising.
The thing that I think is potentially the most damaging is when AI creates a human or a human lookalike. We had that thing during the Wimbledon fortnight this year where the AI completely created, I think her name was Anna. So there's this beautiful woman in a flowing white dress watching the tennis, and she was getting followers after followers after followers. Like everyone was going crazy, and it wasn't real. It's completely not real. And I think that's a little bit dangerous if we start to think, oh, well, if we can do that, why don't we do that? Because that'd be much cheaper than hiring influencers, let's say, or whatever it is. But I think the challenge with that is, I'd love to get your view on that. The challenge is that if you're looking at a representation of a human that isn't actually a human, you're going to miss out on a lot of the signals that we give each other all the time when we're talking that you don't even kind of consciously recognize. I think that they're known as honest signals, right? There's certain things we do with their eyes, with our mouth, or there is all sorts of different sort of facial and bodily movements that help us to communicate and signal trust to one another as a species. And so there's no way AI is going to be able to mimic that properly. And so I think there's a concern that if you end up trying to create human-like representations, then you're going to lose that trust. I think it's a case of a cartoon, because you know that's not real and you're not being asked to believe it's real. But it's when it tries to mimic humans to the point where, is that a human or isn't it? I think that's probably a trust issue. I think that is a trust issue. You say that there's no way AI will be able to mimic that. I mean, at the moment it can't, but I mean, I wouldn't doubt the fact that the technology will advance, that we'll be able to train those systems and algorithms to be able to accurately represent the movements and emotions of a human. So I don't think that, I wouldn't rule that out, but I think that creates even more problem, because if people are feeling like they're being misled, and I do feel like there is going to be some backlash, and I think in terms of, we're seeing it in terms of users' reaction to AI in social platforms. I think we're going to see more even advertising that is in some way AI generated, content that is AI generated. But then I think there'll be some. So arguably there's some backlash already happening, that people will be seeking out more human, genuine experiences. Now, I think you confuse the two. I think if the inputs to AI, whether it's from a creative or a content producer, are of a high enough kind of quality that they're producing really good quality AI output, then I think you could still have something of super high quality that has value. But I think I think there's a real danger of sort of misleading the consumer in whatever sense they're consuming that content. That is. Yeah, for sure. I think and the other danger is when you think you've just seen, I don't know, Donald Trump say something, but he hasn't, because it's been manipulated by AI. I think that's potentially even more dangerous if it gets to the point where you can't tell the difference. Because a lot of young people spend a lot of time in vertical video feeds and TikTok and Insta Reels and wherever else it might be. And if they think they've seen somebody that they feel they should trust because they're a leader say something, they're going to believe that. Yeah, and I mean, I think I saw a couple of things recently of football managers who had been sacked, and comments that they're making comments about the owner of the club, and if those comments are super extreme, everyone sees through it straight away. But if they're like just little manipulations on kind of what you might accept as normal, then actually that's the danger. It's like it's the small lies that I think can creep through. So definitely some way of being able to monitor and control that is crucial. And is that happening yet? I mean, I don't really know. Is there any sort of control across social on video content that's been manipulated by AI? I can't think I've seen any. I haven't. I mean, it must be. It's already. I mean, I've had some conversations with advertisers and agencies about this topic. I think it gets wrapped up into the wider brand safety challenges of social platforms, full stop. But it's, if you are an advertiser, and given I think it is mainly happening on social channels, I think that space is becoming even harder to navigate. I'm kind of happy, because I want publishers and genuine content producers to thrive, and for the balance to kind of readdress. So in a way, sort of, I hope that challenge continues for a while, and advertisers and brands
look to find the alternative that's been there for years.
Yeah, indeed, to the open web.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very good. So final thoughts then. What's we're recording this in Q4 25, so probably back to back now for the next few months. But what does 2026 hold, do you think, for CTV in particular?
I mean, I can only see the area growing, but I think it's kind of, it's such a vast area already in terms of, the amount of different players that are operating in that space. So for us, as well as continuing to innovate and put out lots of different creative formats, ways to interact, enhance targeting, we're also investing more in just research in general to understand both sort of ad effectiveness, but also kind of the consumer's user experience. You mentioned the point before about sometimes kind of, sort of controlling ad frequency and things like that. So we're putting a lot more focus on understanding how they enjoy the user experience in different CTV channels. So
I find it's a mixed bag with my consumer hat on. I'd have to say that different platforms offer a very different experience as it relates to advertising. There was one platform that my wife and I were watching a series on, and the same ads just kept coming up at the end of every break, at the beginning of the next break, and like if you're watching like 4 or 5 of them on the bounce, it's too much.
No, I agree, and I think there has been some of those challenges in the early phase. The ad podding has been a kind of a strand of sort of product development for us this year that's been really important to enhance and be able to control more, and hopefully. The sort of value that a partner like us adds is that we can control that frequency across a lot of different channels and sort of content producers. So being able to control that sort of frequency and the experience holistically. But yeah, I think for us next year, more creativity, more enhancements from a product perspective, but more education of the space, and that means conducting more research to understand more about how the consumer sort of feels and reacts and responds, and therefore, what's the opportunity? Like, how much tailored creative do they want? How much sort of personalization is important to them as a consumer?
Can you go too far?
Yeah. What's the right balance in different verticals, different kind of advertisers, different moments, different audiences? I think we're at the sort of the sort of scraping the surface in terms of our understanding of the space, and it's a space that has so much opportunity to continue to innovate and improve, but is already in a great place.
Yeah.
So
how do advertisers measure success today on CTV? Obviously, you mentioned research to sort of build that out as you go along. But what does that look like today? What does success look like on a CTV campaign?
It's interesting because obviously attention is part of the process and is a crucial part of it. In the CTV space, I think definitely attention measurement has lots of room for improvement. So the reality is there are less signals than in the online video world, where you can look at scroll velocity and lots of different factors. I think in the CTV space, it's more limited. So we're always looking at ways to improve that, but attention is clearly important. For us, still, good old-fashioned brand uplift studies are still kind of what most advertisers value most. They want to understand, we've put together a really smart, sophisticated targeting strategy. We've produced custom enhanced creatives, but did it move the dial? Did it make people feel more positively about my brand? So I would say nearly every campaign that we run, there is a brand lift study element to that.
How does that work on CTV? How do you deliver that brand list study?
So you kind of essentially use the IP address to identify the user, and then map that to either sort of cookies or other identifiers to be able to find that consumer across the web, and then target that advertiser. When we do brand lift studies, we always kind of leave a gap of it's like 10 to 15 days between the consumer seeing the ad and us then finding that consumer to then ask them questions about the campaign. So rather than the old days of here's an ad. Did you like the ad? So I think actually sort of more sort of credible methodology, but the reality is the brand lift partners that we work with are having to develop cookieless solutions anyway. So given the sort of decline of online cookies as well. So it's but in CTV, I think the sort of the brand lift metrics are still probably the most important to most advertisers.
Very good. That would make sense as well. It's predominantly, I would have thought, a brand platform, right? You're sort of building brand. It's more top of the funnel awareness, consideration, rather than click here to buy. Although that's coming, I'm sure. But I mean, we've developed this year a lot of different retail sort of retail ad formats, and we've also just agreed a partnership with Titan where we're kind of working with them on to be able to access their retail media sort of data. So a lot of agencies obviously are leaning into that world of, okay, when it makes sense, and for advertisers in certain verticals, how can they turn that TV experience into a potential consumption or transactional experience. Yeah, something maybe dual screen. If you could tell who's sitting in front of the telly on their mobile, watching the telly, maybe it could be via the mobile. It'd be easier, wouldn't it?
Well, a lot of the retail experience in CTV still involves some kind of scanning of a QR code. So I think users are used to that process. I think what's important, and we've seen it for whatever reason, we use QR codes a lot still to try to encourage some interaction in CTV, but there has to be a reason, there has to be a purpose. I think there's no point just discover my brand, discover more or find. It has to be a real strong reason, and if that is a transactional opportunity, that's a really strong reason if you're targeting the right consumer. But there has to be a purpose.
Yeah. I remember when QR codes very first came out, again, showing my age, and when you couldn't get mobile signal on the underground, and there was a poster for I think it was for a film, I can't remember, and then a QR code, thinking, how am I going to use that then? Yeah. That was actually thought, that we're 200-foot underground, this isn't going to work. Yeah. These days, obviously, you can get signal, but anyway. Yeah. Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. Much appreciated. So much. Lovely to see you again, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers.